everyone, and welcome to TWF Dynamite or Might. Michael Cole, with Tony Schiavone and with Taz. And today on Dynamite or Might, we are going to see a good show here today. Yesterday on NXT, we saw Seth Rollins beat Keith Lee and keep the TWF heavyweight winnings for another day, Michael Cole says. But how long do you think he will lord as the TWF heavyweight fighter? I can tell you one thing right now, Michael. Seth Rollins with Paulie Dangerously as his overseer. Somehow he got past Aleister Black, and somehow he got past Keith Lee, but we don't know how long that will prolong for, But I guess the sky's a cutoff for Seth Rollins, I guess. I could tell you right now, I'll tell you right now, Michael and Tony, the way I look at it, Keith Lee, yeah, he's strong. Yes, he's mighty. Yes, he was a former WWE NXT heavyweight fighter, a former WWE NXT North Vinlander fighter, former AEW tag team fighter, and UPW heavyweight fighter. But I don't know if that made him good enough for him to beat Seth Rollins. I do not think so, Taz says. Well, Taz, this is coming from a man who a lot of folks thought was too small to be the ECW heavyweight fighter. And somehow you became a two-time ECW heavyweight fighter, both in ECW, Tony Schiavone says, so you're not going to give Keith Lee any luck here, Tony Schiavone says, are you, Taz? Well, Michael Cole says, putting down Keith Lee and saying he's not good enough was like when someone said that you weren't good enough to win ECW heavyweight winnings the first time and the 2nd time in ECW, Michael Cole says. Yeah, the only unlikeness is that, well, I don't know. I just don't think Keith Lee is going to do it. Yes, he's a former EPW heavyweight fighter. Yes, he's a former WWE NXT heavyweight fighter. But that's really all he's really good at. Yes, he's a former WNXT North Vinlander fighter and an AEW tag team fighter. But that's about it. Alright, Keith Lee says. I know what folks said about me over the years. Keith Lee, you were only good enough to win whatever you won. I was in EPW when I won EPW heavyweight winnings, when it was a thing, I guess. And then I was in WWE when I won the WWE NXT North Finlander winnings. And then I won the WWE NXT heavyweight winnings. Good enough for me. And then when I went from NXT to Raw, I had many fights with Drew McIntyre and also with Randy Orton. And I could have won the WWE heavyweight winnings, but no, that wasn't booked for me to happen. And then when I went from EPW, WWE to AEW, the only thing I did was win the AEW tag team winnings, and that was it. And I'm going to tell you right now, Seth Rollins, you got lucky. Alright? You beat me, you got lucky. But I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen, at least not here, not today, on Dynamite or Might. So why don't you just come out here now so we can end the thing that you started. Ladies and lords, my name is Paul E. Dangerously, and I am the leader of the Dangerously Bond, or the Harmful Bond. Keith Lee, yes, you were one of the greatest wrestlers to ever be at EPW before WWE bought EPW and went to WWE. You won EPW heavyweight winnings, And on your time in WWE when you were in NXT, you won the WWE NXT North Finlander winnings by beating Adam Cole. And then you went on to beat Killian Cross, a man that no one thought that you could beat, and somehow you did. And you became the WWE NXT heavyweight fighter. Then, after that, you went to Raw, but you didn't do so very well once you were on Raw. You had alright matches with Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. They gave you the nickname Bear Claw, Keith Lee, shifted your theme, shifted your song to something else, then fired you. Then you went to AEW and you won AEW tag team winnings of Isaiah Scott. And that was it. You didn't really do anything else after that. And are you truly doing anything after that? That's where you're wrong, Paulie Dangerously. Because I know I may have made a mistake when I went to AEW. And who knows, I might come back to WWE one day. But I'm going to tell you right now, your man Seth Rollins, who thinks he is so great, because he done all this shit, huh? Well, you haven't been selling enough bumps as your time as an overseer. And you like to say that you're the greatest overseer next to James E. Cornette and Bobby the Brain Heenan. But you didn't sell enough bumps as they sold during their time. So hey, it's time to make up for some of that, Keith Lee says. Time to make up for being all those times that you got stunnered or F5 or F-Jude, or speared or overman struck or whatever the fuck was going on. Hey. What are you doing? You don't give me another match? Say goodbye to your overseer, Paulie Dangerously. No, Keith, let's talk about this. You don't want to do this to me. I'm not a wrestler. Ah! How do you like that, Seth Rollins? That will be you. Well, Keith Lee getting even. Or somehow getting even on Seth Rollins. And we'll have to see if Seth Rollins is going to give him the match or not. If he can even meet Ric Flair to even get that match. And we'll have to see how that all comes out. Michael Cole says, because the main overseer to TWF is going to have to be a busy man. Oh, what is it? Did you see what happened out there, Rick? Yeah, I saw what happened out there. My overseer, Paul E. Dangerously, who was never a wrestler, gets beat up. I guess that's what happens when you're an overseer. You gotta take bumps, Seth. Just ask Bobby the Brain Heenan and James Day Dillon, because they had to take bumps too when they were my overseer. But what do you want? Tell Keith Lee I'll give him the match. And he'll wish that he never put his hands on Paulie Dangerously. Alright, he's got the match. But if you're threatening Keith Lee, then you need to threaten Keith Lee and not me. Keith Lee will fight you, Seth Rollins, for the TWF heavyweight winnings now. And let it be known that I will law work Keith Lee for what he did to me. Well, then I guess you're in the wrong business then, Tony Schiavone. I guess you're in the wrong business then, Michael Cole says. Because overseers take bumps from time to time, Michael Cole says, in the wrestling business. Yes, they do, Tony Schiavone says. They do take bumps from time to time, and I have seen it. And Paulie Dangerously is threatening to law work Keith Lee over this. We'll have to see what comes out of this. Well, Taz said, I had Bill Ofonso as my overseer during my time in ECW until he fired me and then took on Sabu and Rob Van Dam and some other wrestler. You know? But during my time, you know, so I can understand why Seth Rollins wouldn't be happy with what happened to Paulie Dangerously. This match is for the TWF heavyweight winnings. We need to get a fight lord in the ring. First, he is Keith Lee, and he is the TWF heavyweight fighter with his overseer, Paulie Dangerously, Seth Rollins. Well, you can see how this match is going to happen. And Keith Lee just picking up Seth Rollins like he did to Paulie Dangerously earlier, Michael Cole said, and gave him a body slam. Well, that could be a body slam, or it could be a suplex, Tony Schiavone says. Only I believe this is a suplex, Tony Schiavone said. That was a body slam. But anyway, Michael, Keith Lee is overtaking Seth Rollins. Come on, Taz says. Everybody liked to think Seth Rollins couldn't do it. But Seth Rollins has done it. This man is a former two-time WWE heavyweight fighter. This man is a former WWE NXT heavyweight fighter. A former FCW heavyweight fighter, too. Taz says. So don't reckon Seth Rollins out yet. Taz said, well, Keith Lee coming from the top steeple. Oh, he missed, Michael Cole says. And Paulie Dangerously couldn't handle it, and wakefulness made him fall down. And now Seth Rollins right now just threw Keith Lee back first in the ring steeple over there. And now he's going to get ready to do the side stomp. Only Keith Lee got back up and knocked Seth Rollins down. Then once again he falls down. Paulie Dangerously right now, you know, getting back up right now. Again, back up right now after being knocked down 2 times by mistake, you know, by wakefulness. And now Seth Rollins just got dropped, awkwardly got dropped down. Anyway, Paulie Dangerously, Keith Lee just struck Paulie Dangerously, and now Seth Rollins, Paulie Dangerously. Why did he do that for? Michael Cole says Paulie Dangerously just helped Seth Rollins beat Keith Lee again. Yeah, he did, Michael Cole says. Paulie Dangerous, he did, Tony Schiavone says. Keith Lee did. He did. Well, Michael Cole says he did do that. Well, he did do that, Michael Cole. He did do that, Tony Schiavone said. Michael Cole said, Paulie Dangerously helped Keith Lee beat Seth Rollins here today. Helped Seth Rollins beat Keith Lee here today, Michael Cole said. Yes, he did, Tony Schiavone said, and it was a dirty thing he did that. An unfair thing. Well, Taz says, it's over for Keith Lee now. 1, 2, 3. Ding, ding, ding. here is your winner. There. Well, here is your winner, and still the TWF heavyweight fighter. Here is your winner, and still the heavyweight fighter, the TWF heavyweight fighter, Seth Rollins. While Keith Lee, came very near, to beating, Seth Rollins here today on Dynamite or Mike. Michael Cole says, yeah, he did. Tony Schiavone says, and if it wasn't for Paulie Dangerously, we don't know if Keith Lee would have beat Seth Rollins. Tony Schiavone says, we don't know if Keith Lee would have sadly had Seth Rollins beat or not. I guess they hit this up and down. We'll never know if Keith Lee was going to win or not, Michael Cole says. We'll never know if he had to win. That's right, Tony Schiavone said. We'll never know if Keith Lee would have had Seth Rollins beat or not if it wasn't for Paulie Dangerously doing what he did. Well, Taz says, I guess we'll never know. But the one thing we do know is Seth Rollins did beat Keith Lee. And Keith Lee is not the TWF heavyweight fighter. Anyway, we'll take it away now to Mike Lane. Well, thank you, Tony Schiavone. Thank you, Michael and Tony. I'm going to be talking with Keith Lee. Keith Lee, you got to really be let down that you didn't win the TWF, heavyweight winnings. Well, Mike Lane, it was a letdown. I truly thought that I would have had Seth Rollins beat. I truly believed I'd be the TWF heavyweight fighter. But sadly, that didn't happen because since of Paulie Dangerously and him and his bullshit, Seth Rollins got lucky with Aleister Black. He got lucky with me because of Paulie Dangerously. If he didn't have him, there's no way Seth Rollins would have beat me, and I would be here, standing here, as the TWF heavyweight fighter. Well, Mike Lane says, hopefully, Keith Lee, that someday you do become the TWF heavyweight fighter. However, that day doesn't seem to be today, though. But I don't think you're going to give up, are you? No, Mike. No, Mike, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up until I become the TWF heavyweight fighter. And that will happen one day, because I'm not giving up. And I'm not done with you, Seth Rollins. Well, that's my talk with Keith Lee, who is mindset on becoming the TWF heavyweight fighter someday. Back to you, Michael Cole and Tony Schiavone. Well, thank you, Mike Lane, for talking with Keith Lee here today on Dynamite or Might. And it's all the time we got here for Dynamite or Might. I, Michael Cole, with Tony Schiavone and with Taz. We hope you like Dynamite or Might, and we'll see you tomorrow for Impact or Hit.